I never thought finding my dream wedding dress would end with my fiancé laughing at me in front of an entire boutique. He called it plain and cheap. The look on his face, that cruel, condescending smirk, it just broke my heart. I was standing there on the pedestal, feeling totally humiliated and fighting back hot tears. But his smug laughter died the second the world-renowned designer walked in and revealed the shocking truth about the very gown he'd just insulted. Looking back, the signs were all there. They always are, aren't they? Little red flags that you brush off, thinking they're just harmless quirks. But then they all weave together into a giant banner of warning you just can't ignore. I'd been with Mark for 4 years, and for most of that time, I really thought we had something special. He was magnetic. When he walked into a room, he didn't just enter. He took it over. He was driven, ambitious, and had this intensity that I, a quiet book lover who ran a small vintage bookstore online, found really exciting. He made me feel safe. But his world was completely different from mine. His was a world of brands, status, and what things looked like on the surface. I remember for our second anniversary, I saved for months to buy him this beautiful, vintage leather-bound first edition of his favorite book. I was so proud of myself for tracking it down. I just pictured him holding it, appreciating the history of it. When he opened it, he gave me this tight, polite smile and said, "Oh, wow, an old book. Thanks, babe." The very next week, he bought himself a ridiculously expensive new watch, calling it an investment in his personal brand. The book got shoved onto a dusty corner of his bookshelf, a silent reminder of how different we really were. And there were other things. The way he'd wrinkle his nose at my cozy, slightly cluttered apartment, calling it charming, with a tone you'd use for a stray dog. He'd make comments about my sensible, paid-off car, suggesting I lease something more appropriate. "It's all about perception, babe," he'd say, tapping his head. "You have to project success." My family, a warm, loud bunch who care more about laughter than luxury, were a source of constant, low-key condescension from him. He'd show up to our Sunday barbecues in a designer polo and loafers, looking like an anthropologist studying some lost tribe. He'd smile and nod while my dad told his fishing stories, but his eyes were completely glazed over. "Your family is so authentic," he told me once on the drive home, and the way he said authentic made it sound like a disease. When he proposed, it was a huge spectacle on a chartered yacht, with a hidden photographer to capture the candid moment for his social media. The ring was enormous, a blinding rock that felt heavy and just not me. But of course, I said yes. I was in love. Or at least in love with the idea of the man I thought he was underneath it all. I thought the wedding would be our chance to finally merge our worlds. I was so wrong. The wedding planning just became a battlefield. I wanted a small, intimate ceremony, maybe in a historic library. He wanted a grand hotel ballroom and a guest list that was less about our loved ones and more a who's who of his professional network. "This isn't just a party, sweetheart," he'd explain, like he was talking to a child. "It's a strategic event." Every single decision was a negotiation where I was the only one compromising. I felt like a passenger in my own life, and the one thing I held on to, the one piece of this wedding that had to be mine, was the dress. It was the last piece of myself I had left to defend. The hunt for the dress became my quiet little rebellion. Mark's mother, a woman who mostly communicates through sighs of disapproval, insisted on coming with me. The first few appointments were a total nightmare. She and the stylists, cheered on by her saying, "Money is no object," pulled gown after gown that just felt like costumes. First, there was the princess gown, a monster of tulle and taffeta so big I could have hidden a small family under the skirt. It was covered in thousands of tiny, itchy crystals. "Oh, darling, it's breathtaking," his mother chirped. "It just screams, important." I felt like a cupcake. I looked in the mirror and didn't even see myself. Then came the siren gown. It was this skin-tight, heavily beaded thing that must have weighed 30 pounds. It was glamorous, sure, but it felt cold and restrictive. It was a dress that wore you. So sophisticated. Very modern, the stylist gushed. Mark's mother nodded. "It has impact," she said, which was her highest praise. I felt like a statue. It wasn't me. None of them were. After the third boutique, I faked a headache. I needed a break. But instead of going home, I drove to a small, unassuming shop I'd passed once on a quiet side street. It just had a simple name on the glass, Serafina's Trove. It looked like a place where dresses had stories. The moment I walked in, I knew. The air smelled like lavender and old paper. It was a small, curated shop with just a handful of unique dresses displayed on mannequins. The owner, a woman named Serafina with kind eyes and silver hair in a long braid, didn't rush me. She just smiled and asked, "What story do you want to tell on your wedding day?" Tears immediately pricked my eyes. It was the first time anyone had asked what I wanted. I told her everything. About my love for old things, for simplicity, for elegance that whispers instead of shouts. She listened, then disappeared into the back. She came back with a single dress in a simple garment bag. "I think this might be it," she said softly. "It's quiet, but it has a very powerful voice if you're willing to listen." She unzipped the bag, and I literally gasped. It was perfect. It didn't have a single bead or crystal. It was a masterpiece of pure fabric and form. The gown was made from a heavy, luminous silk that just seemed to glow. The cut was a simple, classic A-line with a graceful boat neck and long sleeves. The artistry was in the details. The seams were basically invisible, and the skirt moved like liquid. When I put it on, it felt like it was made for me. It was timeless, elegant, and so deeply me. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time, I saw a bride. Not a princess, not a statue, but me. Tears of pure joy started streaming down my face. My mom and sister, who I'd brought with me to this secret appointment, were speechless. "I'll take it," I whispered. I didn't care what it cost. This was my dress. This was my story. My final fitting was supposed to be a happy, quiet moment. Just me, my mom, my sister, and Serafina. I stood on the pedestal, feeling serene. The dress was perfect. My mom was dabbing her eyes, and my sister was snapping pictures, whispering, "You look so beautiful." It was one of those perfect little moments. And then the bubble burst. The bell on the shop door slammed open, and in walked Mark. He was supposed to be in a meeting. My heart did a nervous little flip. He wasn't supposed to see the dress. "Finished early, thought I'd surprise you," he announced, a big grin on his face. The grin vanished the second his eyes landed on me. I watched his expression shift in slow motion. Confusion. Then his lips curled into a sneer. A low chuckle started in his chest. "That's it?" he said, his voice dripping with disdain. It was loud enough for everyone to hear. My mom's smile froze. I tried to laugh it off. "It's classic, Mark. Isn't it beautiful?" He circled me like a shark. He pinched the priceless silk between his thumb and forefinger. "It's a little simple, isn't it? I mean, it looks like a bedsheet, babe. A very well-pressed bedsheet, I'll give you that." And then he laughed. A loud, braying laugh that echoed in the silent room. He was putting on a show. "Honey, this is our wedding," he said, dropping his voice to a loud whisper. "People are expecting more. This is underwhelming. It looks cheap." Cheap. The word just hung there in the air, sharp and ugly. The heat of humiliation crawled up my neck. Tears burned behind my eyes. "It's not cheap, Mark," my sister snapped, her voice trembling with rage. Mark just waved her off. "Oh, come on, be honest, it's plain." He then pulled out his phone. "I've got to call my mom. She's not going to believe this." He actually started dialing. "Mom, you are not going to believe the dress. It's, well, minimalist is a generous way to put it." That was it. A sob broke out of me. Mark rolled his eyes. "Oh, here we go. Don't be so sensitive, sweetheart. I'm just being honest. You'd rather I lie?" Cruel people always say that, don't they? They use honesty as a weapon. He was painting me as the hysterical, over-emotional woman, and himself as the rational, honest guy. The public humiliation was a power play, a final, brutal move to control me. And I just stood there, trapped on the pedestal, the beautiful dress suddenly feeling like a fool's costume. I wanted to disappear. My dream moment had turned into a nightmare. Serafina, her face a mask of fury, was trying to guide me to the dressing room. My mom was now in a heated, whispered fight with Mark by the door. "How could you do this to her?" she hissed. "I'm saving her from embarrassment," he shot back. "Our friends would laugh at this dress." Just as I took one step off the pedestal, the bell on the door jingled again. This time, it was a gentle, melodic sound. A woman stood in the doorway, and the entire energy of the room just shifted. She was probably in her late 60s, with a sharp silver bob and eyes that saw everything. She wore a simple but perfect black pantsuit with a slash of red lipstick. There was this quiet, immense power around her. Serafina froze. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Madame Vance," she breathed, her voice barely a whisper. My blood ran cold. Helena Vance? Even I knew that name. Helena Vance was a living legend, a designer who basically revolutionized bridal wear. She was notoriously private, almost a recluse. Her being here was impossible. Mark, who had been in the middle of a rant, stopped dead. His jaw literally dropped. As someone obsessed with status, he knew exactly who Helena Vance was. His smug look melted away, replaced by slack-jawed, star-struck confusion. Helena Vance didn't seem to notice the drama. Her eyes, sharp and intelligent, landed on me, on the dress. She walked right up to the pedestal where I was still frozen. Her eyes weren't on my tear-streaked face. They were on the gown. A strange emotion crossed her face. Nostalgia, wonder, and a deep sadness. She reached out a hand, hovering it just above the fabric, like it was a sacred artifact. The entire room held its breath. Then she looked up and met my eyes. Her gaze was surprisingly gentle. "I haven't seen this gown in person since my mother wore it," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "This isn't just a dress, it's a legacy." The silence that followed was absolute. The only sound was a small, choking noise from Mark. Helena Vance's eyes were shining. "My mother," she began, "was a seamstress in a small village in Italy. She made this gown for her own wedding. This is the prototype, the only one." She gently ran her fingers along an invisible seam. She used a technique she invented, a single-stitch reverse lock. No one's been able to replicate it. The silk. This is mulberry silk from her village. The silkworms fed on a leaf that only grew in that valley. The valley and the village were washed away in a flood in 1972. This fabric, it's extinct. It's priceless. Her gaze finally landed on Mark, who looked like he'd been turned to stone. "When I started my career," she continued, "my dying mother gave me this dress. She told me, true elegance needs no adornment. This dress became the foundation of my entire first collection. It launched my career. It is, without exaggeration, one of the most important pieces in modern fashion history. We call it the elegy." She turned back to me. "Serafina is one of my oldest friends. The gown is on a secret loan from my personal archives before it moves to a museum next month. She was only meant to show it to clients she knew would appreciate its soul. Every word was another nail in the coffin of Mark's arrogance. He was pale and sweating. The plain, cheap bedsheet was a one-of-a-kind masterpiece. Finally, he found his voice. It was thin and pathetic. "Wow," he squeaked. "Wow, Helena Vance, incredible!" He turned to me, a grotesque, desperate grin on his face. "Babe, I knew it. I could tell there was something special about it. The simplicity. It's genius. I was just testing you. Testing to see if you understood its true value." It was the most pathetic lie I had ever heard. Seeing him scramble like that was just nauseating, and in that moment, it all became clear. It wasn't about the dress's impossible value, it was about Mark's character. He didn't see me, he saw a brand. He didn't see love, he saw an investment. He couldn't see beauty until someone with status pointed it out to him. I couldn't marry a man who only saw life through price tags. I stepped off the pedestal, stood up straight, and looked right at him, my tears finally dry. "You failed the test," I said, my voice cold and clear. I turned to Serafina. "I can't buy this dress. It belongs to history." Then I looked at Helena Vance. "But I would love to talk more if you have the time." Helena Vance gave me a genuine, brilliant smile. "I would be honored." I walked into the dressing room, slipped out of the priceless piece of history, and put my own clothes back on. I walked out of that boutique, past my stunned family, past my shell-shocked, humiliated ex-fiancé, and into the sunlight with Helena Vance. I didn't look back. It's been a year. I never married Mark. I walked out of that shop without a fiancé, but I walked out with my dignity and an incredible new friend. Helena took me under her wing. I now help manage her archives, traveling the world, surrounded by beautiful things with real stories. I get to use my love for history every single day. I found a world where substance is valued more than style. And funny enough, I did end up wearing a Helena Vance gown for my own wedding a few months ago. It was a simple, elegant dress she designed just for me. And my husband, a kind history professor who loves my cluttered apartment and thinks my old car has character, cried when he saw me. Not because of who designed it, but because it was me. It turns out the only thing cheap in that room that day was Mark's character. I learned that some people see a blank canvas and call it empty. Others see the possibilities. The most important thing is to surround yourself with people who see the possibilities in you. If you enjoyed this story and believe in knowing your own worth, give this video a like and don't forget to subscribe for more.